Hi, my name's Tim. Welcome to this video presentation of some new features that are in the eBanking suite from Sandler Account Software. This version of eBanking that we're going to be talking about is called version 8. That's the eBanking version, and the features and functions that you'll find in this version are all implemented for the following Dynamics versions 7.0, 6.5, 6.0, and 5.5. So let's get started. The eBanking suite consists of 5 modules. Historically, there have been 4. In this version 8, we've now added Wire Transfer Plus. The first module we're going to talk about is Positive Pay, also known as Safe Pay. Then we'll go on and touch on the AP Electronic Funds Transfer, new features there. Then the new module Wire Transfer Plus, AR, Electronic Funds Transfer, and then we'll wrap up with Lockbox Processing. Let's get started with Positive Pay now. Okay, Positive Pay. Let's take a look at what's new in this module. First off, what we're going to notice is the look and feel of the Create and Send screen has changed. And this is common actually across a number of the other modules in eBanking. What we've done in this version is taken the eBanking files, those files that you send to the bank, and create a grid that actually shows records that represent those files. And then below that, you'll see the batches that are organized or have been aggregated to support those files. And this is the way we've now begun to organize. We'll find that I think it's much easier to understand and also refer back to historical data. With this organization, files are more easily resent and audit reports can be more easily reprinted. Let's jump over and take a look at what that looks like in the application. So what we have is SL7, Dynamics SL7 here, and this is the eBanking Suites menu. And what we're going to do is go into the Create and Send Files application. On this screen, you'll notice it's similar in terms of there were 2 tabs as before. The first tab was EFT. If you had that module, it would be enabled. If you have just Positive Pay, then this would be the tab that would come up. Again, you're going to notice quite a different look here. Again, the top grid represents a file that was sent to the bank, and below that now, as you highlight one of those files, you'll see the actual batches, that the SL check batches that make up that file that was sent to the bank. What we get here on that top grid is then actually the name of the file that was transmitted to the bank and the date and that kind of information. So how would you go about adding a new eBanking file and send more batches, Positive Pay batch to the bank, Positive Pay file to the bank? You'd use the new eBanking File button, and this brings up a screen that you're all very familiar with. This lists those SL check batches that are available to be sent to the bank. So to select them, you simply check them off. Up here you can tell that these have already been sent because of the file number. You just check a couple of batches to select them, click OK. That's created a new eBanking file here at the top. It's assigned it a file number. The way I have this set up right now, it's another new feature. It's adding the date and the file number itself to the file, so that now instead of overwriting the common name, it will create a new file. There's an option, of course, to leave it the same way it was before. At this point, you would simply hit Begin Processing, and it would work just as it always has before. So that's one of the main things that you're going to notice about the Positive Pay module. A couple of other nice new features are what's incorporated under this Details button. And if I highlight one of these other batches that one of these other files we've already sent to the bank, and we click the Details button, what we have now are a couple of tabs here in Details. One is it lists the actual checks that are in that file. So this this file happened to have payroll checks. So what we have is a list of all the checks that were in that file that were sent to the bank for Positive Pay. A nice historical feature for you. In addition, under File Details, we actually have the file itself. So this is formatted according to the particular bank that you're sending it to. And so now we have a representation of that file itself. So with this new Details tab, we get a lot more drill down information to historical files that were sent. And then the final piece that I'll highlight here is that if we had a file that we had sent previously, if we unselect this and we select that then we can do a number of options. We could either resend it very easily, create and send that file, and or reprint the audit report. Again, this file, we have the batches that are associated with it, so no longer do we have to remember the various batches that were related to a particular file. Accounts payable EFT, electronic funds transfer. This module, probably had the most number of enhancements and improvements to it. So let's get started. One of the most obvious thing that you'll come across is that the pay-by method can be set at voucher entry. Previously, a vendor was set to be an EFT vendor. And then, as you know, they were selected into payment selection batches based on that status. Now, a vendor can have individual vouchers that are set to be paid electronically, or other vouchers to be paid through SL check. That'll become more obvious as I do the demonstration. The payment selection filter, and this has been a request that many of you had for a long time, is that now when you use the payment selection filter, it goes through the payment selection batch you've done in AP, and in one pass it will create multiple batches for processing, one for SL check and one for ACH. So that's a big step forward. The look and feel of the create and send screen is now organized around eBanking files. This is similar to Positive Pay, and we'll see it in AR-EFT as well. So those eBanking files are what you send to the bank. And then below that, we show the batches, the SL check batches that are aggregated against those eBanking files. Email notifications now can be completely customized. Previously, as you know, the header, the top and the bottom of the message of the email could be modified, but now the actual body of the text, the remittance information, also is completely customizable. eBanking Security has two new features at both account approval and amount approval. Account approval has to do with making sure that an individual doesn't modify a bank account and could commit fraud by sending money to maybe their own account. Amount approval prevents large dollar items to be sent without the appropriate approvals. When files are sent now through Create and Send, also the path and file name can be changed when they're created. The other thing that's changed with APFT is APFT is now used strictly for US ACH transactions. If we're using Canadian formats or others, that will now be used through the Wire Transfer Plus module, which I'll be talking about next. With that, let's go and take a look at what APFT looks like in SL7. So what I have here on the right is the eBanking menu in SL7. And let's go take a look at vendor banking entry first. I'll bring up a vendor, Kim Abercrombie. And what we're going to look at first is the concept of transaction types. When your eBanking administrator sets up your system, they're going to say for US ACH that there are various transaction types that we want to support in our implementation. And in this case, the CCD, child support, tax payment, and PPD have been selected by your eBanking administrator. But now by vendor, you're now specifying that this vendor can only be paid by SL check or PPD. In other words, these other two options are not available. So now by vendor, you can further restrict, and you should further restrict your vendors to have the appropriate transaction types or entry classes for them. Once you've done that, this combo box that used to have all of them will now be restricted by those that you've designated. Another feature to note here is that can this option now be changed in voucher entry? And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But what it means is that if this PPD is the default way that this vendor can be paid, can they also be paid by SL check? Meaning, can it be changed in voucher entry? And let me go over there right now and show you a little more what that means. So I'm going to go over here to Accounts Payable menu, go to Voucher and Adjustment Entry. Bringing up Kim again, what you'll notice is now this has been customized to have a pay-by method listed over here on the right. And as you'll notice, there are two options, and those are the two options that you'd set up for that vendor. So this voucher could be paid by SL check or as a ACH PPD transaction. And since the vendor was set up to allow either, it can be chosen here. If you'd set up the vendor that cannot be changed, then the data entry clerk doing voucher adjustment entry would not be able to make this change at this point. So this is now allowing that pay by method, by vendor, and by voucher at a further refinement from what we had previously done. Let's go over to the payment selection filter in the eBanking suite and see how that has changed. This was the process that you ran after the normal payment selection process in order to create what we had as a selection batch, and we removed the EFT folks or removed the SL check folks. Now what we do is, if I bring up a batch here, what we find is that in this particular batch 122, it's said that there's one computer check, one voucher that's going to be paid by check, and actually there are two vouchers that it should be paid by USACH. So it gives you a preview. If I did begin processing, it would create actually batch 123, and the outcome of this process, payment selection filter, we now have the two batches, one for computer checks and one for ACH. So this is that one step, one pass processing I talked about in the PowerPoint presentation. This is a feature that many of our beta sites and initial users have really enjoyed, to have this one pass processing, unlike before where you had to do it possibly multiple times. So let's now get to the heart of AP EFT processing, and that of course is the create and send screen. You're all very familiar with this. The look and feel of this has changed. What we find on the top now is a grid that represents actually files that have been sent to the bank. And at the bottom, what we find are the batches that are associated with those files. So, and this is a little different than before. That was a test or pre-note only, so there were no batches. But here in this case, we have a file, and this batch 117 is affiliated with it. So this is how it's now organized, and we do then processes against this file. And if we wanted to send a new file to the bank, create a new EFT file, we use the new eBanking file button. That brings up a familiar grid to us, which is basically all the EFT batches that are waiting to be processed, and the simple matter of checking a batch, checking off a batch, and now hitting OK. And now that brings it into the front grid for a new eBanking file, and it assigns a new eBanking file number. At this point, you just simply hit begin processing, and it works exactly as you're familiar before. Another new thing to note here is that the file name itself now is identified at this time, and it might be changed. This is an option in the setup by your eBanking administrator, that this EFT file name can be changed. Also, you'll see that in this case we have it set up to add the date and to add the eBanking file number to the file itself. That's an option. It can be turned on or off. But in any case, this actual file name, if you have rights and have it set up such, you could actually modify the file name at the creation time. So that's another feature that various users have asked for.